Good afternoon and welcome or welcome back. It says I'm live and everything is working about a minute early. So if you're here, jump on. Let's see. Okay, something. Well, it should be working. So after last week's little mess up, I wasn't connecting and still had trouble during the week. I would check every once in a while and the little circle would go round and round and round. And hello, Rose, and hello, Holly. Welcome. And I'm glad that you missed me, and I'm glad to be back. Um, so I really had intended to try and hop on during the week, but as I would try the connection, as I said, it was going round and round and round. And hello, Shirley. Welcome. So I did have to reboot my router today because it was working this morning and then it wasn't. So hopefully everything's okay and nothing freezes with my hands when I turn you down. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So maybe you saw last week's my introduction to this card that is a square card, not something we make very often. Let me move that away. And they do cost a little bit more to mail, but maybe it's going to be a card that you will give to somebody too. And so in the midst of all of this, and after I'd figured out exactly how to make this, so I'll tell you that story in a minute, somebody asked me if I would make a wedding card for them. So this is the one I made, and will give you a little bit of a preview. So I just took a quick picture of the one that I made, so it's going to be very similar to this today. Although I think I'm going to make a birthday card. I think. Okay, so that's kind of what it's going to look like. You don't actually see the whole thing. So let's get down here to my desktop. And when I saw this card the week before while I was gone, and it was a little crafting retreat with 4 of my other good friends. We were ways away, but that's what we do all week. We fix meals and somebody else there? Okay. Oh, it said it was a reel. Okay. Anyway, so I saw this on Instagram, I believe, and it was a reel. So that means it's short. There was no voice to it, just music, and everything was in centimeters. Hello. So I know that shouldn't be difficult to figure out, but I fussed and fuddled and whatever with this. So anyway, this is what I came up with. So I had to do all of what she was doing and then make the conversion. So I'm going to be using a piece of Floral Delight paper today. And this is what I'm doing is part of the online exclusives. So this is Floral Delight. I don't even have much of this left to show. I also said I was going to do an envelope at the end, and I'll show you how I came up with the measurements for this. And then I have some samples to show too. So sit back, relax, and write things down if you need. So it does take pretty much a full sheet of paper. That is 5.5, because that's the size of our card, 5.5 by 11. So we're going to cut this at 5.5. So I hope you had a good week and got through the heat and had some good air conditioning or fans that were working. Okay, so this will be used. So even though it's a full sheet of paper, there's very little waste. Although I've done some of the cutting already, so I'm just going to set that aside. And now we're going to, hello, Gloria. And now I'm going to turn this and score it at 5.5 because half of 11 is 5.5. Okay. And where is my bone folder? There it is. And we'll give it a nice crease. So now I want to cut a portion of this off. So I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to cut off 3.5 inches. So that will leave a 2-inch panel. So move this over to 3.5. So it really is an easy card. It just wasn't that easy for me to make all the conversions into from centimeters to inches. Thank the Lord we never had to learn metric, because I don't think I would have been very good at it. I don't know if you know this about me, but my background was I taught typing, which is now keyboarding, and now I don't know what they do with their fingers on keyboards. Hello, Sue. And there was one time there was talk of we would do metrics. Well, if you know anything about typing and setting margins and all that good stuff for letters and blah, 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 all that stuff, I thought, oh no, I cannot learn metrics. I'm too old to do that. So anyway, it never came to pass, and we're still doing inches in the United States. So anyway, here's a piece of paper that is now left at 5.5 by 3.5. Okay, I have also cut a piece of the Designer Series paper from the Floral Delight, and this is 5.5 by 5.5 with just a teeny sliver taken off of the one edge. I don't know if you can see this over here, but when I go up to the 5.5, it's just a sliver. And that is so when it goes into the card, make sure I've got the right way going, it doesn't buckle here. Because if you make it a true 5.5, it's going to go right to that score line and it will buckle a little bit. So that's our card base. Oh, Sue, I'm so glad. Oh, I know that you're going to love those boys to do your weeding for you. So exciting. Wait, I still am going to need that a little bit. But let me set it aside because I might as well go ahead and glue this down. When the boys came to my house a couple weeks ago, it was a different crew because he now has a crew of boys. So that's pretty exciting that kids that young have a good work ethic, and they sure do. Okay, so I'm going to add some liquid glue here. So that part will be done. Oscar was out of town when they came to my house, so I had the crew that had Parker, and Parker is his other partner. They're just the sweetest young boys. Okay, so what I have here is obviously a very cool card. And what's nice about this is because you get to see the back side of the Designer Series paper. And I always love to be able to show both sides because they're always pretty cool. So now what I need to do is to make some strips. And we have one strip, and I've already done most of this, but I will give you the dimensions. I have one strip that is 5 3/8 by 1 3/4, and that's going to go here. So everything that I'm going to cut for these strips is going to be a little bit less than what is there. So that makes any sense. So I'm going to glue this down, then we'll do the strips. And I have already embossed this. And I'll show you the embossing folder in a second. So just looking at my corners. So here's the embossing folder that I've used, and this is called Pressed Flowers. And let me find a piece of paper so you can see it a little bit better. It's really very pretty. I don't know if that shows very much on there too. Okay, but anyway, it's got a design with just very light, delicate flowers. That's probably why you can't see it very well. So now I have strips that are going to be 3 of them that are 3/4 by 5 3/8, and those are also embossed. And I just put those in the embossing folder along with this piece and ran those through. Now I need to layer those on 3 pieces that are 7/8 by 5 1/2, because this is the full 5 1/2. So I hope that's making sense, because the card is 5 1/2. So let's see, I had these laid out a certain way. So these are just a little bit smaller than this. Again, these were 3/4 by 5 3/8, and these are 7/8 by the full 5 1/2. So let's put this over here. So have you ever found a card that you loved online and you just thought, I've got to make that or learn how to make it? And it was kind of hard when there were no real directions other than just following it along. But the cool thing about videos that we can watch nowadays is that we can watch them over and over and over again. And believe me, I did. Because part of what the measurements were covered up by some other script. So anyway, that's the story. And this also gives it some stability, because this is pretty flimsy just the way this is right here. Now when I get this done, I'm going to show you how to create an envelope to go with this square card. And speaking of envelopes and postage, I understand that postage is going to go up again on the 13th of July to 78 cents for a first class 1 ounce postage. And square cards then cost even more. Currently it's $1.19 because it has to be hand canceled. Okay, so now just to kind of back up, these strips came from the piece that was cut off when I did the 5 1/2 by 11, and this 5 1/2 inch piece that was cut from this. So there's not much waste. You've got enough left over for sentiments and to use for other cards. So don't look at it as waste. So I'm going to start off by putting this first one right here at the edge. And somehow I managed to get glue all over me already. So that one goes right up to the edge. And then I'm going to stagger these other two to get pretty much the same amount of space between. Okay, where is my, I had, there it is. An adhesive eraser. We used to sell these a long
Bob and Bobby Harwell.
Oh dear.
Bobby Harwell or one other.
Hold on a minute. My sister must have forgotten that I'm doing this today, so I'm just going to let that ring through. She'll figure it out. I hope she doesn't just call right back. Sometimes she just does that too. Okay, so I'm going to put this one over here first. She usually remembers because I didn't talk to her this morning, and she says, oh, you're doing your video today, right? So I'll talk to her later. And just leave a little bit of space between so you can see that beautiful designer series paper. And then we'll decorate. Okay, there we go. So that is the basic card. And again, this was 5.5 by 11, scored at 5.5. And I cut 3.5 inches off, which left 2 inches here. And then these pieces were 3 of them at 3/4 by 5 3/8, and that's what is embossed, along with this piece that is 1 3/4 by 5 3/8, and that came from the leftover. And then also from that long piece, 3 pieces for the base at 7/8 by 5.5, so it all matches up. Okay, now let's decorate it. And I'm going to use these beautiful, I think I did these before, I'm not sure. These are called Foiled Frames and Labels Ephemera Pack. So it's these beautiful gold frames. And with these, you get the inside piece. Hold on, we go there. And then this pops out. So this can be used as well as this. I'm only going to be using this part right now. But these are really, really nice, and you get lots of them. And they are just in gold. So let's put those aside, because now I'm going to emboss. And I'm going to use Birthday Wishes from Simply Said, one of my favorite stamp sets that carried over. It was from last year's catalog, and I don't know if it's in this year's or it's carried over to online. So we're going to use Birthday Wishes. Grab a block. And one of the rules about embossing is once you've touched something, it probably has finger oils on it or something that is going to attract the embossing powder that you don't want to be there. So that's why we have an embossing buddy. Just kind of tap that over, and it takes care of the static cling as well as the finger oils and stuff that are on there. And this comes with our the embossing buddy, not this container that it's in, with this and also with some tweezers and a brush. I think they've gone someplace else. So now let's take our Versamark pad, which is what you use for embossing. Tap, tap, tap. And let's see, do I want that? I'm going to go kind of in the middle. If you've never embossed before, it is just magical. I always say every time I emboss that that's what got me hooked on stamping, because it was so impressive. Okay, I could probably use my tweezers now. I took so much stuff with me when I went away that it's not already all gotten back in its home place. So I'm going to sprinkle that on there. Looks perfect. And then you just take this little lid off of this and put it right back in there. Got it all. These are I call them new. We've had them now for about a year, I think. Wow embossing powders. So I particularly use these. We've got them in groups of 3, the metallics, gold, silver, and copper, and then black, white, and clear. So they come in packs of 3. Okay, so now let's grab the heat tool. And you can tell when it's done because it's nice and shiny. You can overheat it too. And if you overheat it, then it tends to get dull. And then it's just like overcooking a pot roast. Then it's no good. So now we got our birthday wishes. That's going to go on there. And then I've grabbed some gold foil, and I'm using a punch that is on. Yes, you could over emboss. I used to emboss over a toaster. Yes, long time ago. This is the bow punch, and it is on the last chance list. It's so good to have this if you don't already. So check it out. Things that are on the last chance list, once they're there, when they're sold out, then they're gone. So this is a good one to have. Let's see. I think what I really want is just this big one, not that little one. So let's cut that off, and hopefully I made that big enough. That's good. And let's do another one of those. Okay, so let's add those under there. Then we'll put some bling on there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just add this. You can do it from underneath instead of on top, and then maybe you can see it a little bit better. And sometimes I switch back and forth. So yes, Rose, that's a good tip. So what I'm going to do is hold those where I want them to go. And for that, instead of using the liquid glue to hold those down, I'm going to use a piece of tear and tape. But I'm not going to take the release paper off. I'm just using it to hold that down. And then I could add dimensionals if I wanted to, but I think I'm just going to do that flat. I think embossing really sets a card apart and shows somebody that you really care. Not that all of our cards aren't that way, but there's just something about gold embossing, silver embossing, any kind of heat embossing that is just so, so special. So I'm just going to kind of straddle that over those panels. And let's kind of hold that down there for a minute. Now let's quickly get to the envelope, then I'll come back and finish that. I've already cut a piece of paper that is from the same pack of the Floral Delight. And if you're lucky enough to have an envelope maker, it's on the other side of the room, and I do have one, then it's a piece of cake to make this. But we don't sell that anymore. So I thought I would show you how to make one without that. So I did look up some dimensions on it. And since this card is 5.5 by 5.5 for a square, of course, with the envelope maker, you can make any size card that will pretty much accommodate a 12 by 12 piece of paper. So for a 5.5 by 5.5, you add 1/2 inch and then 3 more. So 5.5 plus 1/2 is 6, and 3 more is 9. So this piece of paper is 9 inches. That's it, okay? And I want this to be my outside. So I'm going to put this like this, and let's come back to our card here. And you really want to find the center point of that 9-inch piece of paper, which happens to be 4.5. Half of 9 is 4.5. So I'm putting this at 4.5, and I'm going to do something that, don't freak out, I'm just going to make a little cut mark here at the 4.5 mark here on the slide. And I'm just going to press down there really easily. Just press a little bit to get a teeny tiny little mark to give me the center point. Because for me, that's a lot easier than doing the ruler. So there's a teeny tiny mark there. Believe me, nobody will ever know that there's a little cut in that paper. That's just what works for me. So keeping this on the diagonal like this, and I can feel where that is. I want to take one side, so I'll go from the right side here first, and I need my glasses for this one. And there's that little mark. And I want to take this side a little bit beyond, maybe half an inch beyond that. And bring the other side over to cross over maybe by half an inch. Now, keep in mind, this is just paper, so it's not going to be perfect. So now, let's take our card and put that in there and kind of center it. Now, again, if you have the envelope punch board, it's going to notch, put little notches in, which makes it obviously very, very easy. We're going to create our own notches and then cut them out. So this gets folded up. Maybe that's a little bit too far down. Let's go up a little bit more. Nope, I liked it where it was. Okay. And then we're going to cut those parts out to eliminate the bulk here and here. Okay. And we're going to flip it and do the same thing here. And I suppose if you didn't want to do the extra step of flipping out those little notches, you could, but it'll make your envelope a whole lot better. So let's give those good creases again. And then we'll snip out those notches. So these notches right here and here and here and here, we're going to cut out, and then it will go together really, really well. So you want to cut those out right on this, really not a score line, it was just a fold line. So, but again, it's an envelope, so don't worry if it's not perfect. Easy peasy. I just love to make envelopes no matter what. I love to use up my designer series paper and make envelopes. Okay, that looks a little raggedy, but nobody will ever see it. All the things we do with our cards that nobody ever sees if there's a mistake, because they're always just happy mistakes. Okay. Okay, that releases all that bulk there. So I don't think it made any difference which way I went on this. And if there's a direction on your paper, that might make a difference how you want to do the envelope, but I don't think this one really makes a difference. So let's see, that's a little, it's okay. So let's grab that tear and tape again. And tear and tape is also good to use for your envelope flap, and that way you can make it ahead of time, and when it's ready to either deliver or put in the mail, then you can pull that off instead of going to look for the glue. Still don't like that very well. Let's snip some more of that out of there. Okay. So let's add some tear and tape here. And just burnish that a little bit so that you can pull off the release tape or release paper. Now you can, if you want to, corner round this. On the envelope punch board, there is a corner rounder available. We don't have a corner rounder punch, and when I try to do that myself, it just doesn't really look very good. So now we have our envelope. Here's our card. All we need to do is add some bling to it, and for that I'm using the low profile dots. These are also an online product, and we'll use these gold ones. And we've got some big ones and some little ones. And let's really go all out here. Let's put 5 of them on here, because we have to stick with that odd number. Where shall we put the 5th one? Let's put that one right there. So that looks pretty good. So there's our card. Before I forget, let's add the, where'd it go? Where'd I throw it someplace? Okay, anyway, the tear and tape, you would just put a strip here, and then it's ready to go when you are ready to deliver it. So there's our card and matching envelope, and let me show you the others that I made. These I don't have envelopes ready for yet. This was the first one that I did, and this is from my wonderful, love it. It's from the Kinsunig suite in the current catalog, and I don't have the dies yet, so I just cut these out of the designer series paper. And today ends the suite, S-U-I-T-E, suite sale, where if you purchased a suite, you get the next one half off, or any product out of a suite, you get 50% off. So let's say you wanted this designer series paper, and you wanted the designer series paper from another suite. The lesser of the two would be 50% off. But this is the inside of this one. So this is happy anniversary, and I believe this one will go to my grandson and his wife. And then this is another one that I made with the same Floral Delight paper. And I love the checkered in here. And then here is another happy birthday one. And I forget what the paper this one is. Someone we're celebrating every single day. And I don't know that I'm real keen on that paper, but it's a good way to see the inside of it. So still love it. So that does it for today. I'm so glad everything was working. And I will hopefully see you again next week. It will be July. We'll be already past July 4th. Do you believe it? So have a great holiday on Friday, and enjoy. Hope you're doing something fun. I'm going to a picnic, and those are always fun too. So I will see you soon. Take care. Have a great rest of the week. Bye bye.